It was supposed to be just another ordinary day at the park, but things took a dark turn when a young blind boy named Jamal found himself the target of cruel mockery. A police officer, instead of offering help, chose to belittle Jamal for his disability, making harsh remarks that drew uncomfortable stares from bystanders. Jamal stood silently, his white cane trembling slightly in his hand, unsure how to respond to the humiliation. But what the officer didn't know was that Jamal wasn't alone. Within moments, a car pulled up, and out stepped a towering figure in uniform, Jamal's father, the chief of police. His sharp eyes took in the scene, the tension crackling in the air as he approached. The officer's smug expression faded fast, replaced by a flicker of panic. What happens next will leave you speechless, as respect, justice, and the true meaning of leadership come to light. The crowd grew quiet as Chief Harris strode toward the scene, his badge glinting under the afternoon sun. Jamal's face lit up with quiet relief, though he didn't say a word. The officer, realizing who was approaching, shifted uncomfortably, his earlier arrogance fading fast. But Chief Harris didn't speak right away. His eyes scanned the situation, the trembling cane in Jamal's hand, the uncomfortable faces in the crowd, and the officer's forced, nervous smile. This wasn't just about disrespect, it was about abuse of power, something Harris had spent his career fighting against. What the officer didn't know was that Jamal's blindness wasn't a weakness, it had shaped his strength. Growing up as the son of a respected police chief, Jamal had faced challenges but was taught dignity and resilience. Now, his father's steady footsteps carried not just authority, but the weight of a lesson that needed to be taught, and the officer was about to learn it the hard way. Chief Harris stopped just inches from the officer, his voice calm, but carrying the weight of authority. "Is there a reason you're speaking to my son like that?" he asked, his gaze sharp and unblinking. The officer stammered, trying to explain, but his words crumbled under the pressure. He claimed he was just joking, but the nervous crack in his voice betrayed him. The crowd, sensing the tension, grew larger, their murmurs mixing with the distant sounds of city life. Jamal stood quietly, his expression unreadable, but inside, a storm brewed. He wasn't just hurt, he was frustrated. This wasn't the first time he felt underestimated because of his blindness. But this time was different. This time, the injustice was out in the open, with witnesses and consequences looming. Meanwhile, across the street, a young rookie officer watched the scene unfold. She'd always admired Chief Harris for his integrity. Now, faced with the ugly side of the badge, she had to decide, stay silent or step forward. The silence grew heavier, thick with unspoken words and rising tension. Chief Harris took a slow breath, his eyes never leaving the officer's face. "A joke," he repeated softly, his tone steady but laced with disappointment. "Do you think it's funny to mock a child? Or does his blindness make it easier for you to forget he's a person?" The officer's face turned pale, his badge suddenly feeling heavier on his chest. Jamal's fingers tightened around his cane. He didn't need to see the faces to feel the shift in the crowd, a mix of curiosity, discomfort, and quiet support. The rookie officer across the street took a hesitant step forward, her heart racing. She'd trained to protect and serve, but no class had prepared her for this moment. She knew what was right, but speaking up against a fellow officer in front of the chief felt like stepping off a ledge. Chief Harris glanced briefly at his son, then back at the officer. His voice dropped lower, sharp as a blade. "This badge doesn't give you power over people. It gives you the responsibility to protect them." The officer swallowed hard, words stuck in his throat. The crowd was no longer just watching, they were waiting. The next move could change everything. Just as the tension seemed unbearable, a voice cut through the crowd, a shaky, uncertain voice that didn't belong to Chief Harris or the officer. "Chief, there's something you need to know." All heads turned as the rookie officer stepped forward, her face pale but determined. The officer who mocked Jamal stiffened, his jaw tightening. He knew exactly what she was about to say. "I've seen him do this before," she continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Not just today. He's treated others the same way, people who couldn't defend themselves. It's not a joke. It's a pattern." The crowd murmured, the energy shifting from quiet tension to shocked disbelief. Heath Harris's face darkened, not with anger, but with the weight of betrayal. This wasn't just about his son anymore. It was about a deeper problem within the force he led. The officer's smugness had evaporated, replaced by a defensive glare. "You're going to believe her over me," he snapped, his voice rising with fear masked as defiance. But before Harris could respond, another voice rang out, an elderly man from the crowd. "I've seen it too," he said quietly, stepping forward. The stakes had shifted. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was the beginning of something bigger, a reckoning. The crowd grew restless, the weight of truth settling over everyone like a thick fog. Chief Harris looked from the rookie officer to the elderly man, his jaw clenched, emotions flickering in his eyes, disappointment, anger, and something deeper, resolve. He turned back to the officer, his voice steady but cold. "You've shamed the badge you wear. Not just today, but every time you thought no one was watching." The officer's defensiveness crumbled into desperation. "You can't just take my word against theirs," he snapped, his voice shaky. But the rookie wasn't done. She pulled out her body camera, her fingers trembling slightly, and pressed play. The footage was undeniable, clips of the officer mocking, belittling, and abusing his authority in ways that couldn't be justified. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The officer's face drained of color. Chief Harris didn't need to say much after that. "You're done," he said simply, reaching for the officer's badge and ripping it from his chest. As the crowd began to disperse, whispers of justice and accountability lingering in the air, Jamal tugged gently at his father's sleeve. "Did he see me as less because I'm blind?" he asked quietly. Chief Harris knelt beside his son, his voice soft but firm. "No, son. He saw you as less because he's blind. To kindness, to respect, to what it means to be human." But just as they turned to leave, a final voice spoke, a senior officer from the precinct, hidden in the crowd. "Chief, we need to talk. This problem goes deeper than you think." The story wasn't over. It had only just begun. Chief Harris paused, his heart heavy with the realization that this wasn't just about one bad officer. It was a symptom of something larger. He nodded slowly, his voice firm but wary. "Then we'll deal with it. All of it." The crowd, now witnesses to more than just a confrontation, felt the ripple of change beginning to take root. In the days that followed, investigations were launched, and more voices came forward, people who had been too afraid to speak until now. The rookie officer, once uncertain, became a symbol of courage within the department, standing for what the badge was meant to represent. Chief Harris led with renewed purpose, determined to rebuild trust not just with his words, but through action. As for Jamal, he learned that strength isn't just in standing tall, it's in knowing your worth, even when others try to diminish it. His father's love, the crowd's support, and the truth all proved one thing: real vision comes from the heart.